Hey guys, it's Mace1370. Before we get into this match, please make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. So the pre-bans come out, the opponent pre-bans Arbiter Vildred, and I get rid of Ambitious Tywin. I get the first pick, so I decide to go ahead and pick up Fallen Cecilia. She's a super strong tank in the meta right now. Flurry and Rylot are both super prevalent, and her skill null is a great way to handle Rylot. Her barriers work really well with high defense characters in Frenzy, the provokes are annoying, she's just amazing. The opponent takes Ras and Dain, so they're setting up for a buff-based bruiser team. The defense buff and immunity from Ras, and then also the attack buff and the crit resistance from Dain. It's a really strong combo. So I decided to take Alencia because she's a stripper, so she can get rid of some of the opponent's buffs, hopefully. My Alencia doesn't have a ton of effect resistance, but it's usually enough to get rid of the buffs off of, like DPS units that don't have a ton of effect resistance. I also grabbed Ruel. She's an amazing healer, obviously. Another thing I like about FCC is that she synergizes really well with both Ruel and Dain. Crow, on the other hand, doesn't really synergize with Dain very well. Oftentimes the opponents will focus Dain, and then she has to spam her heals, and you want to be spamming her buffs anyways, and it just keeps Crow topped off and prevents him from horsing. So the opponent picks Falconer Clury and a Ravi, who I haven't seen for a while. And this is a very precarious place for my opponent because they've taken essentially all single target damage dealers. So I take what many people call the Shadow Squad, Spectre Tenebria and Assassin Coli. And I think this puts them in a very difficult position because they have one pick left, and that really only gives them an option of taking one AoE unit, which I can just ban. And then if one or both of my shadow units get through, they're just going to have free reign. The only real dilemma or problem I'll have is dealing with Falconer Clury if I have to ban this last pick. It's Seaside Bellona, she's a really strong AoE damage dealer, so I'm just going to ban her so my shadow damage dealers can sit in stealth and just harass the enemy the entire time. Even with Falconer Clury, I'm not super worried here. My team is very tanky, all three targets. So even with a Death Break, if somebody goes down, my Assassin Coli is going to get a ton of turns. Also, my Fallen Cecilia is going to be able to put Skill Null on my Assassin Coli and prevent Adventurer Ras from knocking him out of stealth. So Falconer Clury is the first here, so I decide to open on her to stun her so that she can't S3. And I'm looking at the speed tuning right now, and this looks pretty perfect. Both Ras and Dain are going to go before my Alencia. I would like to speed up my Alencia a little bit so that she turn cycles better. I think she's about 175 speed now. So ideally I would like her at 185, I think. Maybe even up to 200 so that she takes more turns. But either way I want her slower than the buffers. Right, so the opponent gets the buffs up, I put Skill Null so that my Assassin Coli will stay in stealth. And now I have my opportunity to try and strip away the buffs. Unfortunately I didn't get Mind's Eye from Ras's attack. But I shouldn't need it to get the buffs off of a Ravi, which is, what I want. I luckily got them off Falconer Clury as well, which is good because she's the target that I'm going to try to kill first. The way I lose here is essentially just multiple Falconer Clury S3s, picking my units off before I can pick them off. But Dain does not have a ton of healing output. Her buffs are very strong, so if her buffs stay up, then it's really difficult to deal with her. But because I was able to take Alencia here and get rid of the buffs off of the targets I wanted to kill, it wasn't nearly as oppressive as it usually is. My Assassin Coli is on RNL, and so I'm just praying for one or two RNL procs at the right moment here just to end this quickly.
I hope you're ready.
Out of my way. This is only a temporary alliance.
I provoked the Falconer Clury here to prevent her from using S3. This is another benefit of Fallen Cecilia. Another nice thing about running Spectre Tenebria and Assassin Coli together is if they do get through, you can run Spectre Tenebria on Book, and then Soulburn Falconer, or not Falconer Clury, but Assassin Coli on turn 1, which is extremely potent. Her Soulburn has a ridiculous modifier on it and does a ton of damage.
All right. I'm sure fortune will be on our side today as well.
I'm debating if it's worth using the skill 2 on my Ruel. I decided just to do it because I was anticipating that my opponent would use Falcon or Clary's S3 on Ruel and try to take her out, and I wanted to have her as high hit point as possible to prevent getting one shot. Not sure if that would make a difference, but my opponent's is doing so little damage to me, I didn't feel like it was really super beneficial to hold it. But the opponent elects not to use their S3. I kind of don't know why. They're really just giving me infinite time to kill their Clary here. So I think that was a mistake on their part. I think they should be using S3 on Ruel and trying to kill her.
Be quiet.
So we get another S3 with our assassin Coli here.
To the grave.
And almost kill, but just not quite. But it's okay because Alencia's next and she can finish her off. And so that's pretty much the one threat on the board that I was really worried about down. We still have to deal with Ravi, who can be a little scary. I've avoided hitting her to this point because if she's on, counter set, then she might be able to do a significant amount of damage to my assassin Coli. But I plan on saving her until last anyways.
Don't tell me what to do.
And she hits for quite a bit of damage. But now I'm just going to focus down the Diane. Her buffs are annoying, and I think she should be the next to die. Once I kill Diane and the buffs fall off the other two, they'll fall a lot more quickly. If I was trying to go on Ras here, then the Diane buffs would just make it take forever. And obviously if I went on Ravi, she might, counter hit back and just do a ton of damage to me. So Diane's the right pick here.
Show your elders some respect.
And at this point, I think my opponent's plan is basically just get my Fallen Cecilia down to a low enough level that the Apocalypse Ravi can one-shot the opponent, or one-shot my Fallen Cecilia and then res the Falcon or Clary again. But now Diane goes down, so they're only down to 2 people now. So they may not even res Clary. Ravi is a very strong bruiser, but you have to be very careful about your draft. The opponent really put themselves in a corner by taking only single targets here. You see they were able to get the S3 off and kill FCC. Now their Diane comes back again and starts the whole buff cycle again, but it doesn't matter. I think they realize they've lost, so they go ahead and concede. Okay, so since we just got to see the Shadow Squad in action, I thought I would go over how I build both Spectre Tenebria and Assassin Coli. We'll do Spec T first. The artifact I like to run her on is Book. Sometimes I accidentally bring her into matches on Violin because I use her to farm A13. Violin actually works okay on her. The fact that she hits 2 targets with her S1 typically means that she's, cleansing debuffs. Jeez, come on. Okay, well since we got to see the Shadow Squad in action, I thought I would go over how I build both Spectre Tenebria and Assassin Coli. The artifact I like to run her on is Book. I think it's super strong. You get to soul burn her or, one of your other units out the gate, and her soul burn is ridiculously strong. Oftentimes with her, you want to build up to being able to soul burn twice, and so Book makes you get there twice as fast in that scenario. In terms of her stats, I think running her around 200 speed is ideal. I had her on a slower build at about 175 speed with, more damage stats, a fair bit more crit damage and more attack. And she definitely hit harder, obviously, but it just took forever for her to get a turn, and I really didn't like it. At 200 speed, she seems to cycle around a lot better and I think has higher damage output overall, so I think 200 speed is good. Having some defense on her is also very important. I think about 1300 is what you want to shoot for. There's a lot of AoE in this game, and it's virtually impossible to, pick her into a team with literally 0 AoE. And so having enough defense to survive like an Alencia S3 is really important. And 1300 will put you in a good place to, not get instantly deleted. In terms of her attack stats, I think having 100% crit chance on her is very important. People have different opinions about how much crit you want on people, and you can always sacrifice some crit on bruiser units. And granted, I do use her in a bruiser setting, but Spectre Tenebria hits 2 targets with her S1, and so any crit chance less than 100 is actually doubling the chance you have to miss a crit. So for example, if like Alencia, alright, she's a bad example because she can go S1 into S2, but just pick any unit that only hits once on their S1, like Little Queen Charlotte. If she had 95% crit chance, she has a 5% chance to miss the crit. Spectre Tenebria hits 2 targets, so she technically has a 10% chance to miss 1 crit. Each, 5% for each target. So I think having a 100% crit chance on her is important. It's hard to do because I don't think she gets any crit chance through her awakenings, so you have to, farm a lot to get the right gear with, high crit chance to make her work. But I think it's worth it. Then in terms of her attack and crit damage, I think, obviously you want as much of each of these as you can once you get the speed and defense, and crit chance that you have. If you have the ability, I would favor going more attack than more crit damage, and that's because of her passive here. Every time somebody dies, she gets increased attack and defense, which is another reason to stack more defense, obviously. So having high attack I think is really important because it synergizes with her passive well. Crit damage is good too, and I don't think I'd want to go below 250, but more attack is better for her. So that's Spectre Tenebria. Let's find Assassin Coli. She's here somewhere. Okay, so Assassin Coli, there's a few different ways to build her. I have her on kind of a medium speedy build. Obviously 261 is really fast, but she has a super high base speed, so it's actually not that fast on her. And once I got to 261, I wanted as much crit damage and attack I could get after I maxed crit chance at 100%. She's a unit that you want to have at 100% crit chance, I think for sure, because you really want that S3 to crit. If you miss that crit, that's going to feel super bad. And then just obviously as much, attack and crit chance as you can get with that speed and that crit chance. I think some people make her more of a speed contester, or a speed racer type build where they put as much speed on her as possible. And I think that is a, reasonable build. People do it and they say it works for them. For my, usage, I use her as a tank buster. So in that match you just saw, I was going against a bruiser team. She's going to be zooming around and lapping him constantly at 261. I'm not trying to outspeed like an Alots and snipe him. That's not what I use Assassin Coli for. So I think if you want to use her for that, you can. I don't think that's her primary strength though. I think if you want to build a unit to go as fast as possible and just nuke one target, and get rid of an Alots for like an anti-cleave, I think that Assassin Sid is probably a better choice. Assassin Coli, in my opinion, is a better tank buster. So you want her fast, and her damage scales with speed, so giving her some speed is good, obviously. So this is how I like to build her. In terms of her artifact, I think RNL is a really strong choice. You could put, I guess, Portrait on her. I'm not super familiar with what artifacts people run on her other than RNL. I suppose Portrait. I don't think something like Dreamblade would be good. She's more squishy than Spec Tene, so you have to be more selective with Assassin Coli than Spec Tene. So I like RNL on her. You could consider Portrait, especially maybe if you're going for that really speedy build and you want to really make sure you nuke that first target. Anyway, so that's how I build them. Please let me know if you have any questions, and make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Later.